Lynn is the principal and founder of the Donor Relations Guru Group and a true expert on donor experience. Lynn also just launched an amazing podcast this week called Fundraising is Funny. And I think I was the #1 fan in about 2 minutes of listening. So I hope you all will tune into that as well. We've got a lot to cover today. So grab your paper, your pen, and take some notes. And I'm really thrilled to turn the mic over to Lynn so she can dive into today's webinar content.
Thanks so much, Wendy. I'm so excited to be here with QGive, with all of you. It's been an exciting week, as Wendy mentioned. And just to let all of you know, not only is this being recorded, but it also, you will receive the slides as well. So no need to try to draw anything. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure that works. If at any time you have a question, pop it into the chat or the Q&A. I'm going to keep that open on my screen so that I can hear you all and you can participate. I really love a participatory session. So especially for those of you that I know, hi out there. And for those of you that I'm new to, welcome on board. We are going to talk today about implementing behavior-based donor recognition. And so we really believe not in the donor pyramid, but in the donor funnel. So I think, for many years when I was growing up in fundraising, I was taught the donor pyramid, but most people don't have a pyramid anymore. They have let's see, an Eiffel Tower or a witch's hat or a sombrero. And so I like this idea of welcoming everybody in and then funneling them down through the causes, through the priorities that they care about. Because just like in a body of water, people do different things at different times. And so everyone takes different journeys. And so I learned about customer journey when I had my first career at Walt Disney World. And at Walt Disney World, they have some of the best training in the world. And you learn things like a couple of honeymooners are going to have a different journey than a family of 6. Or that a family reunion is going to be something different than a college reunion, perhaps. One might take place at Epcot, drinking around the world, and one might be hitting multiple parks to please the kids or the grandparents. But we don't do that really well in nonprofit fundraising. We stick to a chart that kind of is like, at $100, we do this. At $500, we do this. For if you give $2,500, we do this. Well, I'm here to tell you that those charts based on dollar amount are gone by the wayside. And there's a couple of reasons why we want to toss those in the trash or recycle them. Number one is, excuse me, ranking donors or looking at donors based on giving amount is not inclusive. A lot of us have done a lot of great work in terms of being inclusive as nonprofit organizations. But then when it comes to the fundraising side, we literally have a chart that says, if you give $25,000, we're going to treat you better than if you give $50. So like inherently, there's something flawed there. Number two, the amount of money that an individual chooses to give an organization is not indicative of their passion for the organization. It's not indicative of how much they care about the cause. It's about how much money they had on that day in liquidity to give to your organization. And we know that first-time donors are test donors. A lot of them are giving test gifts. So they're nowhere near their capacity of their giving, yet we base a lot of decisions on, well, this is what they gave in their first gifts. So that's how we're going to label them. So instead of basing donors on amount, which many of you probably have a chart, I want you to think about donor behavior instead. First-time donors. First-time donors are the single most important donors you have at your organization. I said it, and I'm going to say it again. First-time donors are the single most important donors you have at your organization. I know, crazy, right? But if you don't ever get your donors to give a second gift, then the sustainability of your donor base crumbles and falls apart. So we are going to have an entire behavior for first-time donors. Donors who increase their gift. Last year I gave $50. This year I gave $100. That's a change in behavior we should pay attention to. Lapsed donors, donors that go away, donors that don't give consistently. And then the converse of that, loyal or consistent donors, donors who show up time and time again, even in bad conditions, loyal donors. And then finally, one of the behaviors that not a lot of nonprofits are currently paying attention to is how a donor gives their gift. Someone who gives to you using an American Express card, using their mobile device, is very different than someone who mails you a check, you know, the kind with the kittens playing with string at the bottom, and sends it to you in your business reply envelope. So those are two different behaviors that should have different reactions from our organization. So I am wanting you to stretch, picture your brain as taffy, and we're going to get some brain muscles today, and we're going to stretch our brains to really think about our donors in terms of behavior, not amount. So come with me on this journey. The first thing we're going to do is acknowledge that sometimes we at nonprofits have bad behavior. This is from Cygnus Donor Research. Many of you have read Penelope Burke's book, Donor Centered, I'm typing it in the chat, Centered Fundraising. It's a seminal work in our field. It is research from donors about how they think about their generosity. So here are some things that aren't important to donors. 73% of donors who receive plaques or certificates throw them out. So try not to do plaques or certificates. They're not meaningful to every donor. Know your donors. 83% of donors who are included in a giving or recognition society say that it has no influence on their giving. This study is probably from about 7 years ago, and this has gotten worse. More donors are saying, I don't care if you call me bronze, pewter, or gold. It does not have an impact on whether or not I give. And if we think about giving societies as a practice where, you know, if you give a lot of money, we'll call you something and you're an exclusive member, that is not inclusive. Exclusivity is not inclusive. So if you are an organization that values diversity, equity, and inclusion, yet you still have a giving society for tip-top donors, do you see the paradox there? Do you see that? That is contradictory. So again, two things that donors don't value. However, we do know what donors value. Again, this is from Cygnus Donor Research. And we know that donors expect two things in order to give again. Number one, they expect to be thanked. Thanked for their gift, thanked for how they are as human beings. They need gratitude. And the golden rule is that we thank 7 times before we ask for more money. So we really want to get gratitude without asking. So no donate now button, no envelope, no click to give, none of that. Just pure, unadulterated gratitude. And then the second thing that we want to do is demonstrate to donors the impact of what their money has done. 85% of donors say that when they give to nonprofits, they don't know how their money is used, what was the outcome. And if you look at that alongside of why donors give, so donors give so that they can make a difference. They want to see a change in the world, in your organization, in their local community, in a single human being. And if you don't show them that change, they don't have the trust and faith in our sector to just keep blindly giving. I probably should use a different phrase, excuse me, to just keep giving without trust. So again, we have donors who say, I'm going to give you money, but I need you to showcase for me what you've done with the money. And that is getting more and more important as we diversify and as our donor base is getting younger. Younger donors need to know, hi, I gave you $50. What did my money do? So we're going to talk about journeys today that focus on donor behavior and giving gratitude and reporting back. Good news is I've got tons of samples. And if you go to donorrelations.com, you can find more samples for free. You can download them anytime and really get involved in this idea of behavior-based donor relations. So I'm sure many of you heard when the millennial generation was first sprouting its wings. Now the millennials are in their 30s and they're having children, by the way. They're no longer the young person in the office, that every single one of them wanted to feel like they were a special snowflake, right? You heard that all over the time. But that's not a millennial characteristic. That's a human being characteristic. We all want to be personally recognized, right? Personalization. Everyone wants to feel special. And so one of the ways that we feel special is when we receive personalized communication. So number one, it is 2023. Okay, so you guys haven't woken up for a little while. If you are sending a communication without my first name on it, either in the email subject line or in the body of the email, if it's not personalized for me, you might as well throw it up in a ball and put it in the recycling bin, because personalization is how you get communications opened. It's how they have an impact. Seth Godin, who's a marketing extraordinaire genius, he says that the number one thing that a person wants to hear is their first name. And I can tell you that it's true, especially when it's spelled correctly. So my mom bought an extra vowel, so I have an E on the end of my name. So it's important to me that people know that and use that. Second way you can personalize is by having their behavior or knowing something about them. So my name is Lynn and I'm a first-time donor. My name is Lynn and I'm a loyal donor. So it's not good enough anymore just to have one factor of personalization. It really should feel like, even though it's a mass communication, that this personalization is just for me. Just for me. So again, personalization is key, because not everybody is the same. Now, some of you are going to have a flashback to the 90s, and I have not yet watched the new Netflix show. I'm looking for a good trip to do that on, but this is Wednesday Addams from Addams Family Values. And as you can see, if you said the same communication to her and the person on the right, you would not have the same experience, right? So they're not the same person, even though they may have had the same giving amount or things like that. Now, I've got the chat on fire, keep it going. And Cindy has asked a great question. She says, does handwritten personalization help? Yes, when we're doing mass communications, we actually have done tests where someone in your organization takes a sticky note. Let me grab a sticky note here, grabs a sticky note and puts it on a pre-printed templated letter and just writes something on it. That increases personalization. We also know, though, that some people, especially some of our younger folks, don't have great handwriting because they didn't learn cursive and things like that. So it doesn't always have to be a long note. It could just be something like, have a beautiful day or thank you. But the idea that somebody touched it really does harken back to all generations. It's everybody likes to have something personalized for them. So great question. And so that would be from a sticky note from a member of staff, a volunteer, someone like that. So not necessarily the beneficiary, but somebody to add a note to the acknowledgement. So great question. Okay, so I am going to give you some examples of communications that are particularly effective for behavior-based thanking, behavior-based donor relations, and donor recognition. The first moment that personalization and behavior-based recognition can start is in the receipt. So we know that we have two almost automated or automatic or compulsory communications that go out immediately. Number one is the gift receipt or the tax receipt, either for IRS or CRA if you're in Canada. And number two, the acknowledgement. Those are separate communications, right? And those are separate but unequal. So the receipt is what you see here. This is an example of a tax receipt. That doesn't mean it doesn't have gratitude language on it. This was one that's mailed in the traditional postal mail. We also have a digital version of this. But, and by the way, your receipts need to be beautiful. They need to be well designed. If you're putting effort into some communication at your organization, I highly recommend that you put effort into your receipts. Why would you put effort into your receipts? Because it's the most important communication that you probably send. And the reason why is it's the first one. First impressions matter, folks. And so you really want to send something that stands out, not just a wonky old letterhead or a ripped off piece of paper. You want to make a statement with your receipt that you've really put some thought and effort into this. Same thing for your digital receipts, video, or photos, right? What's unique about this receipt is this is a university, and if you give to a certain area of the university, you get a certain student story. So if you give to athletics, you get a story from an athlete. If you give to science, you get a story from a scientist, things like that. But then at the bottom of the receipt on the right-hand side, you'll see that circle. Not only do we have the gift information, which is required by the IRS document 1776, we have the total number of years of consecutive support, which I just love. And we may or may not have stolen that from American Express. So on the front of every American Express card, it says member sense. And it's really important to people that they be recognized for their loyalty. So at Whitworth, on the receipt, we put the total number of years that you've been supporting consecutively. Now, some of you are like, Liz, have you seen my database? I have. For example, at Whitworth, it stops in 1987. So when we started these, we just put 30 plus years for those who've been giving more than we have records for. You might want to, instead of doing consecutive years, you might want to do total number of years. And when we're talking years here, remember, we believe in the donor-centered philosophy, we mean calendar year. So calendar year runs from January to December, not organization centered, which is your fiscal year. So we want to pull this based on a calendar year, not a fiscal year. So again, when we communicate with donors, we want to communicate in their terms, not in the organizational jargon or their terms. So our terms, excuse me. So this is an example of a personalized receipt that also includes behavior. Then in 30 days or so, you'll want to send a second communication after your acknowledgement. So receipts go out within 24 to 48 hours or immediately if it's an online gift. Thank you letters or notes or postcards or videos go out within 5 to 10 business days following. Then we roll into our behavior. So this is a first-time donor postcard. This is the YMCA of Greater Charlotte. As you can see, no stock photography here. These are real participants. And we're talking about firsts that they've experienced. So whether it's a first time in the pool, first time, after school, whatever it is, we are talking about those firsts. And then on the back of the postcard, again, we have what we're able to do with the gift, and we're drawing you to digital. Now, this was done before the great comeback of QR codes. I swear QR codes have had the greatest comeback since Share, which I might put a QR code on here now, but instead we used a shortened link. And so just some facts about what your gifts go to. And again, pointing out first-time donor behavior. So some of you might be wondering, why a postcard? Well, number one, the human attention span is less than that of a goldfish, so less than 7 seconds. So letters don't really work that well. Postcards, they're cheap. You can go to psprint.com and get 5,000 postcards printed for $100. Very much so. They cheap, they mail at a better rate. They're visual. This is something that someone might Instagram, they might put on their fridge. They're much better than a letter, and nobody has to open things. So again, really accessible, easy to use. We love postcards. And postcards require those of us at nonprofits who may or may not enjoy the English language a lot and get wordy to edit, right? Edit, edit, edit. Think of Hemingway, not Faulkner, not Dostoevsky, not Sartre, but again, short and sweet. So postcard. Here's one that we did at the Dell School of Medicine when we were working with the University of Texas. It talked about firsts and then their first gift. So again, modern developments in medicine. And then I love this text, your first gift, our next breakthrough. Great for a place that is talking about research. And again, we also go into BOY. One of my favorite acronyms is BOY, because of you. And so putting that donor and having them know their impact is really important. So because of you, 100 future doctors are receiving scholarships, right? Because of you, our community is finding ways. So also thinking about the community, instead of saying, Dell Medical School has 100 students. Dell Medical School is tackling health challenges. Dell Medical School, right? We don't want to talk about the organization. We want to talk about the donor and the community together. But ideally, because of you is really simple language for you to learn. You could also use a video platform. So this is ThankView. I will type that in. They even have free trials. We are huge on video. So the number one way for people to deliver communications right now in 2023 is mobile video. So this is an example of a ThankView. It comes to you just in an envelope in your email. You can click it, you can receive it via text. And the whole idea here is that video doesn't need to be overproduced, right? It doesn't have, it could be somebody right on their cell phone, somebody on a webcam, looking straight into the camera and doing a personalized video. We even have tricks with ThankView and others. For example, you could pull the 50 most popular first names in your database and pre-film, you know, ThankViews to them. So, hi, Sarah, it's Lynn. And then you can send that to all your Sarahs. Hi, Matthew, it's Lynn. And you can send that to all your Matthews. So that way people are getting a personalized video, a really important touch. Hey, Whitney, yes, giving days, community giving days, Giving Tuesday, absolutely. Natasha, I hope I pronounced that correctly, but I think I got close. How do you convince your CAO? I think that's she. Oh, Natasha, sorry about that, Natasha. I elongated the S's, but thank you for your grace. Your CAO, I believe, is probably your chief advancement officer, that videos don't have to be professionally produced. It does hurt you. So videos don't have to be professionally produced. So I work with many major nonprofits, universities, and we send videos that are filmed, that are done on cell phones, that are done on GoPros. Nothing is edited and super professional. We'll put a nice screen on the front and a nice screen on the end, but we really don't get into high production because the donors love authenticity. So vulnerability and authenticity. I feel like I'm Brene Brown here for a minute. I'm having imposter syndrome, but authenticity and vulnerability. If everything's polished and everything's slick, then it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like that. And also people begin to question how much you're spending on those videos, which really, want to avoid. So one of the things I might do is I might show some examples from other organizations that are like yours, or even wink, wink competitors, someone they might aspire to. So that's the first methodology. The second is you could do an A/B test where you sent a polished video and a video that was more authentic, more grassroots, and you could test that. And then the other thing is you can have them talk to an expert in donor communications who will tell you that authenticity, Natasha, is where it's at. So happy to help you make that case if you need to. So here is an example of a first-time donor journey. Again, we're going behavior, not amount. And so this all assumes, again, and I know it's dangerous to assume, but that you're doing a receipt and a thank you. And those two are separate things. So the receipt is has the dollar amount and talks about where the money goes. The thank you thanks the donor for who they are and their generosity. So you've got those two. Then you might want to send a postcard or an email. Now, my first time donor journeys that I create for my clients are always multi-channeled. They use text, they use mail, they use email, because I don't yet know, I don't have a pattern of behavior from my donors to know, oh, well, they've given 5 times in a row. So therefore they're a digital donor. So that's something that you want to think about, is this multi-channeled approach. And don't forget, text is a channel. Text is a perfectly valid channel. And donors, if they give online, texting a donor, that's the way to go. So within the first 30 days, they might get a postcard like the ones you saw, or an email. Within less than 3 months, they might get a handwritten note. Now, how are you going to produce all these handwritten notes? My favorite way to get handwritten notes is to start every single board meeting by having board members write handwritten notes to first-time donors. I also have them do phone calls to loyal donors throughout the year, but only loyal donors who are giving via check. A phone call to a digital donor can seem intrusive, so we want to be careful there. Volunteers, Sheila, you are right. Volunteers love writing thank you notes. I'm sure none of you have ever gone to your board and said, can I have your help with fundraising? And they just jump out of their chairs and like, I'm ready. I train boards, so I know that they don't say that. But one way that board members and volunteers can get involved with fundraising is by writing handwritten notes, filming a video, sending a text saying thank you. You don't have to ask for money as a board member, but you do have to give gratitude. That is a mandatory requirement of being on the board, is you don't have to ask for money, but you sure do need to give, and you need to give gratitude. So great. I love that, Sheila, that you're using your volunteers. Keep it up. You can use volunteers to film videos as well. You can gather recipients. You could make it really creative and really punchy. So that's a really great way to think about that. Have some fun. So I have a question in the Q&A. How do you handle tracking first-time donors when 1 year they give, the next year their spouse might give, or partner, by the way, or maybe 1 year the business they own gives the gift? Our system would pull them all as first-time donors. So this is a great question. Thank you so much for the person that submitted it. And really that is about data hygiene. So normally when a person gives, we automatically soft credit their spouse or partner. So we would know, and if they have a donor advised fund or a business, we would link that to the donor on their record. Now, none of that is fail safe or fail proof. Worst case scenario, I give in 2019 and then my business gives in 2020, and you send out something that says they're a first-time donor, and they go, oh, hi, no, I'm not. That's actually my business. Thank you so much for letting us know. We're going to connect your business to you in our database, and we really appreciate the information. Boom, problem solved, right? So very, very simple, very easy to do. And again, it's a simple apology. It's an honest mistake. So here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to stop what you're doing because you're afraid of making a mistake. Nothing we do is life or death, thank goodness. That's why I do this for a living. And so people are very grace-filled. We have to be filled with grace when people make mistakes. So after 6 months, they're going to get a thank you video or a video, a text, something like that. And then they're going to send them an impact report. Here's what we did with your money. Here's what we were able to do. But what you're not going to do in that time is you're not going to re-solicit them. After they hit a year, after they get to know your organization, after you've said thank you 7 times and told them what you did with their money, then you can ask them for more money. So this is the follow-up postcard to the first-time donor journey. It says, hey, next month marks 1 year since you first gave to the YMCA of Greater Charlotte. And it has some facts, and then it asks them to renew their gift. We don't go banging people around like piñatas, asking them for more money when we haven't built a relationship with them. And it takes time and effort and communications without an ask to build a relationship. Nobody wants that friend who is always asking for something. The number one reason why a donor doesn't give again after their first gift is over solicitation. I'm sure some of you, including myself, have given to a nonprofit and they don't send you a thank you. They send you another solicitation or an email with an asking button in it. That is not the behavior we want to have. We are building long-term sustainable relationships with our donors. And if we treat them like ATMs, if we treat them like transactions, then they won't stay around and our retention will fall. And the single most important metric that you have for your organization is your retention rate, not how much you raise, but your retention rate. So, hi, Jennifer. Jennifer asks, you want us to wait a year to ask for a gift, for a second gift? Absolutely. Is the problem we're trying to fix waiting a year? I'm sorry, I don't understand your second question, but I'd be happy if you unpack that for me. Why would we wait so long to ask? Well, I don't know about you, but the number one reason why donors leave your organization is they're over solicited too frequently. There are studies from the Lilly School of Philanthropy that talk about that. And donors often report that they can't breathe before they're asked for money. So there's an ask to thank ratio that we believe in. So we believe in sustainable long-term relationships, Jennifer. And so in order to do that, you have to thank them 7 times and tell them what their money did. And so you want to do that. You want to do that. So Stephanie asked a similar question that I'm going to answer as well. What about natural communications that happen periodically throughout the year? Once a donor gives for the first time, they're on the list to receive our newsletters. I hope you're not sending a traditional newsletter. I hope that it's an impact-based storytelling piece and not something with an ask in it. Giving Tuesday postcard and even a year-end appeal. Do we hold some of these back? Yes, we believe in suppression. So can you imagine if I gave my first gift to your organization on Giving Tuesday and then I received a year-end appeal? That would be 2 solicitations within less than a month. And that would not feel good, right? I don't know about you all, but we don't hang around with people who are constantly like, gimme, 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 gimme. There's even a book about this by Adam Grant called Give and Take. And what it says is there's 2 types of people in the world, givers and takers. And the givers are the most successful people in the world and the least successful people in the world. And so that's because the takers never build relationships. It's always, what have you done for me lately? Can I have this? Can I have this? And we as nonprofits don't want to be takers. Now, Anne makes a great point. She says, we are event heavy. Well, I hope you fix that, Anne, because event fundraising, as we know, is the least efficient way to do it. And right, it's 50 to 60 cents to raise $1. So hopefully that'll change over time. And yes, they can come to multiple events, then they're not a first-time donor, right? I'm talking about first-time donors here. Natasha, you've talked about 30 days. I think 30 days is far too short. It's a great point, but I would really, really like to see that be an elongated period. 30 days is a very short time of communication with someone. So great question. Oh, Vanessa, if the solicit once a year rule apply to all donors or just first-time donors? First-time donors. So, but again, you need to have an ample ask to thank ratio, meaning you should have communications that just thank, that don't ask. So these are all great questions, great questions. So yes, soliciting for memberships, Kathy, counts as an ask. So does inviting someone to an event. When you ask me for my time, it's actually more burdensome than my money. So understand, right, that asking is not what you want to do. You want to give time for them to form a relationship, especially first-time donors. How do I know this? How do I know that this is a fact? Right now, across nonprofits, our first-time donor retention rate is less than 20%. 80% or more of donors walk away after their first gift. And the number one reason they give for that is over solicitation. We ask too often, too frequently, for too much money all the time. So if I fix my ask to thank ratio, then the money will be long-term and it will be sustainable. You can go ahead and ask after 30, 60, 90 days, but your donor retention will suffer. So for example, when we implemented this at the Greater Charlotte Y, they had a 22% first-time donor retention rate. They now have a 48% first-time donor retention rate, right? So we have evidence that shows this works. So I love this. I love that we're challenging assumptions. We also have data that shows that this behavior-based really works. Now, you know your donors best, you know your cycles best, and so you know your donors. So if they're giving multiple times a year, then you're going to do that. Just like if they signed up for monthly giving, this is not applicable to them, right? So here's another example of a gift-iversary celebration, right, with an ask embedded in it. And so really want to think about this. So really want to think about gift-iversaries, you know, really celebrating that anniversary of their first gift as a time to ask. Okay, so that's first-time donors. Let's talk about now, if you do nothing else after today, building a first-time donor journey, figuring that out for your nonprofit is going to be super essential for you. So I highly encourage you, if you do nothing else for your donors, a first-time donor journey is everything, because again, you have probably 20% or less first-time donor retention rate. I believe in long-term sustained fundraising. That's how I've been successful and my clients have been successful. If you want money and you want it fast and you're not worried about retention, then, you know, that's fine. But we have relationships with donors for 60 to 80 years. It's important to keep them close to us and keep them happy. The second group of donors that's most important is loyal donors. So I love this quote. I've used this for years. I find it horrific that we at nonprofit organizations claim to be champions of equity and inclusion, except when it comes to money. So if you give $200, you're a better person than the people who give $20, and that's how we treat you. You get a better lapel pin, you get an invitation to an event where a $20 donor wouldn't get anything. I've even seen some websites that say, we don't accept gifts less than $25, which I find to be abhorrent, right? So instead, we're going to think about loyal donors, and why loyal donors don't get attention is usually because they don't give large dollar amounts, but that doesn't mean that they don't care more about your organization. So a little bit of a challenge here is for you to think about the donor who gives the largest amount to your organization, the single largest donor. And you probably know their name might be on one of your buildings, all of that good stuff. But how, and do you know the donor who's given the longest consecutively to your organization? And if you do, you might want to drop their initials. You might want to pat yourself on the back. I challenge each and every one of you as part of your homework to find out the donor who's been giving the longest consecutively to your organization. There's the hero. There's the person who, no matter good or bad, regardless of how much they give, they care about your cause and they are loyal. Loyalty is something that for-profit businesses really hone in on. So I don't do a lot of benchmarking with nonprofits because that's a lot of navel gazing and looking at the past. Instead, great job, Marcia, 52 years consecutively as your donor. So instead, I looked at for-profits, and for-profits really have honed in on loyalty. That's why you all have loyalty cards on your keychains, right? Well, the industry that treats loyalty very well is tourism. Pre-pandemic, for 7 years, I traveled 300 nights a year. So I was away from my home, I was in a hotel and on a plane. I flew millions of miles. And let me tell you that airlines, if you fly them loyalty, treat you really well. So do hotels. So design your donor relations program, your recognition program, like an airline does, not like a fundraiser. So it doesn't matter how much you give. It's how many years consecutively. So look at this example chart from one of the organizations. CYD means consecutive year donor. You could do total number of years. But the idea here is the longer you give, the more communication you receive, and the more personalized they become. So again, it's just like when you fly, it's just like when you stay at hotels. There are perks to remaining loyal. Notice what is not up here, a certificate. Notice what is not up here, any sort of, framed plaque, anything like that. We don't need to give them a t-shirt or anything like that. Love that. I love this, Betsy. You have a donor. Oh, 50th gift. I love that. Love it, love it, love it. So think loyalty here. So here's an example from the Y that we implemented. When you hit 5 years, you get a card with a 5-year-old on it, right? So at 10 years, you get 10-year-old. At 15, you get one of those angsty teenagers, and on and on and on. At 20 years, you get a personal call from the CEO. You could have lunch, but they really do think about an experience that is tailored to you. I have universities where if you hit 25 years consecutively, the president of the university handwrites you a note. It could be the chair of the board. But the idea here is that we're calling out milestones. So that's the version for people who give via check for 5 years or analog. This is the version for people who give online, right? And I love this because it says, this little swimmer was born the year you started giving. How cool is that? For 5 years, you've been a part of our community, right? So I love a loyalty communication. It doesn't have to be complicated, just has to point out the loyalty and some personalization. Now I have a great question that just came into the Q&A, and it says, for loyalty programs, would I have a special track for recent graduates? They haven't been around as long, but might be showing signs of loyalty. Absolutely. So if you notice on the chart, loyalty starts at 2 years. So you only have to give 2 years in a row, because remember, 80% of our donors don't give a second year. So you don't need multiple years. What you can do now, some universities, and I love this because I'm one of these people, I've given every single year since I graduated. I have a perfect streak going, and they remind me of my perfect streak. So you could do perfect since commencement if you want, but loyalty starts at 2 years. Here's another example when I had variable data postcard listed. This organization has pine cones as their symbol. And so what we did is we took a photo of every letter in the alphabet spelled out in pine cones. You could do that using kids. You could do that using books. You could do anything, rubber duckies, whatever relates back to your organization. And the donor received this postcard with their last name spelled in pine cones. People loved it. They put them on their fridges, they framed them. So mine would say Wester. And then on the other side, it said, Lynn, we recognize that 13 years is a long time. So completely personalized. This is called variable data. Any print vendor should be able to do this for you. You just need to give them the images or have them create the images. They could be corners of your buildings. It could be architecture. Just think creatively about what those letters could be. And it's really easy. Again, a postcard, cost effective. It doesn't cost any more money to do variable data than it does to put the address on the postcard. So that's variable data as well. For those of you who are old school like me, that's called a mail merge. You just do it with images. So again, very simple, very easy to execute, which means that at scalability, if you had 3,000 donors, everyone could have a personalized communication. So there's no boundary, no barrier to this idea. This is a handwritten note that the donor would receive when they hit their 20th year from the president, from the CEO, maybe your chair of your board, whoever you'd like to tap into. This is a very special touch. We hand them a list of all the ones they need to write for the year, and they usually finish by August through November, because they'll write them while they fly. They'll write them in meetings. It's a wonderful way to recognize loyalty. Loyal donors. Now, why are they important? So we talked about first-time donors and monetarily why first-time donors are important. Loyal donors are important because they're your single most number one likely group to give planned gifts, to leave you in their estate, to set up an annuity, to make a life insurance policy that benefits you. Loyal donors don't have a lot of liquidity. Lots of social workers and teachers and nurses and, think fixed income, not a lot of salary. But boy, when they pass away, do they give so generously. I'm sure all of you have heard, the story of the librarian who, passes away and leaves $2 million. And everybody's like, well, where did they get all that money? Well, they got that money. Yeah. Just wanted to let you know. So this is really cute. Should you have something that's awesome that you can put forward, it doesn't require, I don't want you to do lapel pins. I don't want you to do tchotchkes. Do things that are meaningful to your donors. So this is from Cornell. When you give loyally there, they did this thing to make your Monday, and you could either sign in and watch a room full of puppies playing or a room full of kittens. Sorry that you couldn't watch a room full of horses, but this is what you can do. You can get creative and have a great interaction. And then for those folks that couldn't make the meeting, the time, they sent you the recording, which was really cute. So now we've got our loyal donors. Well, what happens when someone increases their gift? You can send them a gift increase communication. This is from Pause with a Cause, my friends in Michigan. They do a great job. But the idea here is that we are going out of our way to thank donors in a personalized way that also points out their behavior. So this is the University of Michigan, their matching gift postcard. So for people who get their gifts matched, they have a whole communication series here. This is for donors who lapse, who come back, welcoming them back into the fold. Again, a communication for every reason, a communication for every season, right? So same thing. How many of you are using retargeting? Retargeting. So if a potential donor comes to your website, but doesn't make a gift, are you following up with them? Well, for-profit companies have been doing this for a while. My secret shopping hack is to put everything in your cart and then close out your cart. I never shop the first time through online anymore. The only time I do that is Amazon. But every other place, I put everything in my cart and then I abandon my cart. And then they send me free shipping, 25% off. So I just did that with Eloquii. I buy things and have them shipped here from Eloquii. They're a wonderful brand that I enjoy their clothing because they're size inclusive. And I put a bunch of new swimsuits in my cart. I closed it out. And the next day I got an offer for 40% off everything in my cart. Boom, sale, done. Why are we not doing this with our donors? So I go to make a gift. Why are you not then saying, hey, are you sure you don't want to complete that gift? We're still here. A nonprofit organization that does that really well is Doctors Without Borders. If you go to Doctors Without Borders and you go to make a gift and you abandon, they follow you through your social media and they send you retargeting. It's very, very effective. So that's retargeting here. So many of you are kind of like this right now. You're a little frustrated. You're like, do you realize I work at a small nonprofit with no resources and no time, and I'm doing 6 jobs, and I just don't, this is just another thing to add to my plate. We know that it's 7 times cheaper to keep the donor you have than to go get a new one, which is why I don't believe in super aggressive asking after a donor gives. It's actually financially irresponsible to have a donor abandon your organization and not retain. So instead of trying to create all these behaviors at once, which is the top version, you're going to create one behavior at a time. This is called the skateboard method of development. It's how software companies build software. And so the whole idea is you start with one behavior. If all you did for the rest of 2023 was start with first-time donors, you'd have a skateboard. Great. Then you might add loyal donors. Great. Now you got a scooter. Then you add some pedals and a wheel. You add your increasers. And pretty soon you're driving top down in a convertible with your hair in the wind and you're feeling great. So don't try to do everything all at once. Do one behavior at a time. So this is what a behavior diagram looks like. These are all on the website. These are really easy to understand, but it gives you a plot for what happens in that first time donor journey. So within their first 30 days, here's what happens. Their 3 months, their 6 months, their 9 months, their 12 months, and then their renewed gift. We have these for every type of behavior, and we do monthly donor behavior touches. So every month, our database pulls a list of first-time donors and we start them on their first-time journey. Pulls a list of loyal donors, they go on their loyal journey. Pulls a list of increasers or monthly donors and they go on their journey, because we have charts like this. Instead of charts by how much money someone gives, right? We have charts by how their behavior, doublers, reacquired, monthly donors, 40 for 40 is a giving day, first time donors. Notice that the behavior that's the shortest is the one that I want to encourage you not to spend any time on. And that is right up there under an honor and memorial tribute donors. They don't give to your organization. They give through your organization to the person. They do not retain. They retain at less than 7% rate nationally in the United States. And so all you have to do is send them a receipt and a thank you and move on. Honor and tribute donors do not retain. Neither do donors who've passed away. So that bless them and release them. I'm from the South. We say, bless your heart. And then we say, release them. You will spend so much time on honor and memorial donors for so little ROI. So again, we're recording this and we're sending out the slides. So we're going to gather our troops, and any 90s kid or 80s kid knows what movie this is, and it should give you a good flashback. We're going to gather our troops. We're going to earn a merit badge in behavior-based donor relations, behavior-based donor recognition, where every donor can be recognized, not just donors at the top of the pyramid who give a lot of money. So we have about 5 minutes left. Here's how you can reach me on social. The website, we have over 16,000 samples for you to download, or you can email me. I will start through some of the questions that I haven't gotten to, and please answer any or ask any others, but I'm going to try to get to some of these. Let's see. Amanda, how are you scaling a report that shows impact of a donor's gift if you have many funds and areas? So we group them into what I call buckets. That's a sophisticated word. So if I'm at a healthcare system, I might group them into pediatrics or cancer or research. And then I do reports that way. So I group them together. And so really that way I can group donors together and then report back on that bucket or that group. So that's how you scale that. And again, when I say a report, I could mean a 30-second video. I could mean a postcard. I'm not talking, you know, the old slide, bookmark, clear. That's not it, right? It could be punchy and short. It doesn't need to be a massive, like, comprehensive thing. So yeah, great question. Let's see. We have donors who give multiple times a year for different campaigns. Should we continue sending them asks more than once a year since they've given? Yes, Katie. If a donor displays a behavior, you should follow the donor's behavior. Now, is there a way, your second question, is there a way to ask fewer times that results in larger gifts? Yes, if they're personally managed by someone. It is very difficult to get a donor to give a large amount of money through a non-intimate communication. So I do a whole thing on communications, and some communications are very intimate, like face-to-face meetings or phone calls or Zooms. And some are very not intimate, direct mail, email campaigns, things like that. And so that's not very intimate or personal. You can't ask for $1 million over a tweet, right? You have to build a relationship. Fundraising is about relationships, not about money. And the moment you realize that it's about relationships, that is where the relationship focus comes in. Your donor relations rises, and the importance of that relationship with the donor becomes central to everything you do. So, and Phil, I am so happy to refer Eloquy to you. I also love Anthropology. They have a huge section for girls like me. So I'm here for inclusive clothing advice as well.
I love both of those stores too. Great recommendations.
Yes.
I second them.
Yay. Good job, Phil. Enjoy making your wife happy.
I know we are coming up on the hour. Do you want to dive into more questions, or do you? Yeah. Okay. We're on your time. So
yeah, no, I just want to make sure we're coming up on the end. What I would love for everyone to do, my goal with everybody when they come to professional development, is that they get one nugget. Some people get a 6-pack, some people get a whole catering tray. Leave your nugget in the webinar chat so that when others watch this afterwards, they can see if their same nugget was similar. So thanks so much. And so leave your nuggets in the chat for everyone. Say hi and thank a donor today. Yeah, thank you for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate it. It's all about being funny and fundraising. It's nothing serious, just some good entertainment. So thank you so much, Wendy, for having me. I'm so happy to be here and to be partnered with QGive. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Lynn. This was an amazing session. I'm glad I was off camera on mute because I was nodding and talking along with you. It was really lovely. I know our audience loved it. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. This was really, really awesome. I'm so excited to send out the recording tomorrow so folks can kind of reabsorb this information with some additional resources. And I would love for all of the attendees just to fill out the survey at the end of this. It drives our content and we want to hear what you have to say. So please fill that out. And Lynn, thank you so much again for your time. We appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.